When we first bought this old underground reservoir, we couldn't actually see what it was. The whole site was covered in over 300 trees. And because the whole site was also protected, we didn't even know if we were allowed to do anything with the site. When we first saw the Khaleesi, we could only really guess what was underneath all of this. We knew there were 3 old reservoirs underground. We knew they were large, but beyond that, much of the site was hidden. The trees had been left unmanaged for years, and while some were beautiful, many were diseased or damaged. Loads were growing in places they shouldn't have been, and because they were only in a foot of soil, they were genuinely unhealthy. The challenge was that every single tree on the site was protected. Before a single branch could be touched, every tree had to be surveyed and mapped. Structural engineers had to assess the impact of the trees growing on and around the reservoir itself. We had to agree to plant 17 new oak trees to replace those being removed. And throughout the process, there was one question hanging over everything. What if permission wasn't granted? Because without access to the roof, without opening up the front of the building, without creating space for windows and a front entrance, this project may never have moved forward. So after 11 weeks of waiting, the day finally arrived. It was cold, wet, and not exactly glamorous. We arrived to find branches blocking the entrance before work had even begun. But honestly, none of that mattered, because after months of imagining what this place could become, something was finally happening.
Day one.
Day one! Here we are. It's all looking a little bit bare because of the leaves, but today is the day we finally waited for 11 weeks.
Yes, 11.
To get permission to do the work on the trees that A, is desperately necessary because the trees aren't healthy, and B, is necessary for our next stage of our development. A very, very exciting, slightly miserable early start to the day.
Can we get on now? You done? Right.
At first, the changes felt surprisingly small. One tree came down, a little more light appeared, a glimpse of the view would emerge, and then another tree would come down, and another. And slowly we started seeing things we'd never properly seen before. The shape of the roof, the scale of the reservoirs, the surrounding landscape. For the first time, the Khaleesi was beginning to reveal itself.
I can visualize the front garden a bit more now.
Yeah. When we returned a few days later, it was almost impossible to believe it was the same place. The view had appeared. The roof stretched far further than we'd realised. Over to the old reservoir. It's our neighbour, just there. All of these trees come down in between the two. And this is the top of what will be our home. The old ventilation pipes stood out clearly for the first time, and we could even count how many were there. Features we'd only glimpsed before suddenly made sense. And standing there, looking across the site, we realised something really important. This wasn't just clearing trees. This was the first moment we could properly understand what we bought. What do you think, Larry?
Amazing. Your kingdom.
My kingdom, Khaleesi.
Your realm.
Khaleesi Manor. Looking back now, tree removal might seem like a small step in a much bigger project. But this was one of the most important weeks we've had. Not because trees came down, because uncertainty did. For months, we'd only imagined what might be hidden beneath the undergrowth. Now we could finally see it. And for the first time, the dream became real. And for the first time, we could finally imagine what this place could really become.